Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the AIEC webinar weeks. This is our fourth in the series. So for those of you who have been on the other calls today, welcome back. If this is your first webinar today, thank you for joining us. This is a legal and government relations update. A couple of housekeeping items. Please keep yourself muted unless asked otherwise. This session is set to last for 45 minutes. We're going to leave about 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. If you do have any questions, please submit those through chat. Select AIEC through the drop-down so the message comes directly to me, and I will be acting as a moderator and relaying those questions to Craig and Nick. At this time, I would like to turn it over to our President and CEO, Dwayne Nolan, for a few words.
Thank you, Ashley. And first off, kudos to Ashley Graham and Dan Gerard and Brian Adams for putting together webinar weeks. They did a nice job of a lot of different variety. And I know if you've been on, you've noticed it's been very technical, which has been outstanding. This last session is a little more about what's happening in the world of politics and government and legal issues in our cooperative program and throughout our state. And first, I want to welcome two gentlemen. First off is Craig Sondgroth. Craig is a fairly new member of our staff. He's our general counsel. Craig is a farm boy from Northern Illinois. He's a University of Illinois graduate, and he's worked in local law practice with agriculture, environmental utility issues. And when we found him, he was the general counsel for the Illinois Department of Agriculture. He has been a fantastic addition to our staff, and you'll see a really good update on legal issues from him. Following Craig, and a counterpart in the LNGR department is Nick Reitz. Nick has been in our organization for a few years now, and he grew up in politics. Both his father and brother have been members of the Illinois State Legislature, so politics and government comes naturally to him. He has worked for some state agencies here in Springfield in legislative affairs and has a really good handle on the pulse of government and politics in Illinois and in the federal government. So I look forward to both of those presentations. But first, I'd like to introduce Craig Sondgroth. Craig, please step forward.
Thank you, Dwayne. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully you're enjoying your webinar so far, and we're going to try and move along quickly. When I watch webinars, they never quite seem to move quickly enough, and so I'm here to kind of not bore you to death, and there's some dry topics, but I'm going to try and keep it lively for you. So let me bring up the kind of topics that I'd like to talk about, and I apologize in advance for managers that are on the call because several of these topics are going to overlap with a meeting we just had last week with managers. Of those on the call that are not managers, this will obviously be new, but for those that were on the call, I do apologize in advance. First, I'm going to talk about on the legal update. We have a position here at the Association of Illinois Electric Cooperatives known as a regulatory compliance manager. That person in that position was Courtney Graham until recently. Courtney left AIEC at the end of October, and she went to a new position at Brandt. Brandt is a company based in Springfield. It's an international company. It mainly produces and distributes fertilizers and chemicals. It's just a great opportunity for Courtney, and it's an international company with lots of room for growth. So I can certainly understand her desires. I really wish we could have kept her, but you know, that's fine that she wants to go to Brandt as well. I wish her all the best. Going forward, we are going to we're in the middle of a search process. So I guess one of my messages for you, if you know of anyone that has maybe regulatory compliance background or at least an interest, you know, and would be interested in maybe this position, feel free to let us know. Let me know, let Dwayne know, let anyone know here at AIEC that we could consider that person, that candidate. So that's kind of my plug for the regulatory compliance manager. The topic I want to talk about, we recently had an issue come up regarding bucket trucks. And the real crux of the issue is overweight tickets. We had a cooperative who had an employee driving a bucket truck who was issued a overweight citation. And the issue is the rear axle or axles. In Illinois, under the Illinois Vehicle Code, you're limited to 20,000 pounds per axle, unless it's a tandem axle. Then you're allowed 34,000 pounds, assuming that neither of the tandem axles alone exceeds 20,000 pounds. So when you're thinking about a bucket truck, the front axle, 20,000, that's rarely ever an issue because the front end of a bucket truck wouldn't be that heavy. The rear is the concern. And the way a bucket is mounted on a bucket truck oftentimes can put more weight on that rear axle than you'd otherwise want. So this driver was issued an overweight ticket because it was a single axle rear bucket truck, and it exceeded that by about 2,300 pounds. I believe it weighed 22,300, well over the 20,000 allowed. So they received the ticket, and so I looked into it, and on the law, the ticket is allowed. However, I'll point out a couple things. One is that if you're worried about your bucket trucks or your cooperative being overweight, one solution is to buy a tandem axle truck. Well, obviously that's not the best solution because it costs more. It's more to maintain, it may impact turning. There's just lots of reasons why you would rather have a single axle in the rear than a tandem. There, in addition, under the law, is an exception, and I'll read that for you. Quote, in the Illinois Vehicle Code, it says weight limitations shall not apply to vehicles, including loads, operated by a public utility when transporting equipment required for emergency repair of public utility facilities or properties. So there's really two components to it. One is whether you are a public utility vehicle and whether it's transport equipment required for emergency repair. As to the first issue of whether you're a public utility or not, we spend most of our time in the co-op world telling others and explaining to others that we're not public utilities. Well, that's really in the context of what's called the Public Utilities Act. Think of the ICC in that jurisdiction. However, under the Illinois Vehicle Code, you are a public utility because there's a different definition in the Illinois Vehicle Code for public utility, and it's much broader. And this is fortunately good. So one takeaway you might have from today is that you didn't know, but you actually are a public utility. It just depends on which statute you're talking about. In the Illinois Vehicle Code, a public utility is each firm lawfully licensed and engaged in any of the following: the transmission of telegraphic or telephonic messages, the production, storage, transmission, distribution, sale, delivery, or furnishing of heat, cold, light, power, electricity, gas, or water. It's very broad. It certainly would include us. So I don't know how often enforcement would ever really be against a utility vehicle anyway. I think the officer who issued this citation was maybe on the newer end and going by the book. So first of all, there's certainly discretion by the officer. Second of all, there's also an exception out there as well. And we're going to be sending out a memo to put in glove boxes of bucket trucks, kind of outline this definition and this exception. So that's kind of an update on bucket trucks. We're hoping that's not really much of an issue going forward and really doesn't require any sort of legislative effort or relief. But that's kind of a topic on bucket trucks and overweight. Ashley, any questions you're receiving on bucket trucks?
Sorry, I have a hard time finding the mute button. No questions as of right now, Craig.
Okay, well, if you thought that was exhilarating, I'm here to take it to the next level, and it's workers' compensation. So
back your slide up too.
sorry about that. I want to talk about workers' compensation. This is something that I didn't talk about in the manager's meeting. So if you're a manager, this is new information. First, I'm going to give a little update on claims. Make sure I have enough time here on claims. And then we'll go in a little bit in detail. We had a workers' compensation board meeting on Friday afternoon. So regarding claims, one topic is where are employees, electric co-op employees, where are they being injured on their bodies for workers' comp? We all essentially have a program where all of our data is combined. So in electric cooperative employees, the top 4 areas people are getting injured are their lower extremities / knees, shoulders, their trunk, which is just your upper body area, your upper extremity hands, and your upper extremity upper arms. Those are the top areas people are getting injured. And those are all fairly common based on our past experiences. One point I'll note out, one category we often have a lot of injuries is what's known as multiple body parts. It's kind of a vague category, but essentially when there are many body parts injured, you really can't point to one, they put it in there. And that's usually a large category for us. We are significantly down in that area. So that's a really good sign that we're down in injuries in that area. As far as how are people getting injured, how are electric cooperative employees in Illinois being injured? The highest ones right now are fall, slip, and trip, hand tools or a machine in use, a motor vehicle, or a fall or slip on the same level. Those are the highest areas how people are getting injured currently in Illinois. We have a pretty good story to tell because there's a lot of categories that we usually have a lot of injuries in, and we don't so far this year. A couple of those are falling on ice or snow. Obviously, we haven't gotten any this winter, but this is a calendar year basis. So coming out of last year, we haven't had any claims line, which is great. Second of all, pushing or pulling a strain or injury. We usually have a lot of claims based on those, and we don't have any so far this year, which that is very significant. You think of an alignment and you think of the work they do, there's a lot of strain and pushing and pulling that goes on there. So the fact that those are down, I think is significant. I don't want to predict too much, but I think we're going to have a lot lower claims and claim amounts for this calendar year in 2020, which is a good thing. I think a lot of that's probably related to COVID. A lot of that's probably related to how much work is allowed to be done during COVID. But as far as work comp, people getting injured, that's a really good story to tell. One question some of you may have, I certainly had it, have we had any COVID work comp claims? And when I last spoke with Federated is our insurance carrier, we had one COVID claim turned in, but it was withdrawn. So we technically hadn't had any at that time, but I don't have the most recent information. I'd have to contact Federated again. But as of the last time I spoke with Federated, we had not had it. So that's an interesting tidbit for you. As far as employees are getting injured, another interesting, I think, data point, our highest amount of tenure. So the people that are getting injured the most, how long have they worked at the cooperative? If you've worked at the cooperative between 10 and 20 years, that's where most injuries this year are occurring, which is not abnormal for us, but what is abnormal is the next tenure position. If you've worked at the cooperative between 20 and 30 years, those are down significantly. We usually have a lot of injuries in there, those 20, 30-year employees, not years old, but how long they've worked there. And that's down considerably. So that's great news. Also want to talk a little bit about the age range of employees that are getting injured. If you're between 40 and 50, it's about on track. If you're between 50 and 60, it's running about on track. But if you're between age 30 and 39, that category down significantly. So I guess the story to tell here is there's a lot of pockets in here that really are pointing to a decrease in claims, which is a good sign for everyone. Just two minor other tidbits on workers' compensation. The two highest months for claims this year in 2020, what months are the most apparently dangerous and most likely to get injured? July and October. That's when we've had our most claims this year. And finally, what day of the week had the most? So far this year, Tuesday is way out in the lead. So Tuesday is the most dangerous day so far. Next, I want to talk about the AIEC is going to be conducting a capital credit survey. We've tweaked it for this year to kind of ask some specific questions related to the pandemic and things that cooperatives may or may not be doing related to capital credits. If you're a manager, you know about this, but we're going to be surveying cooperatives to see how they do it and see if there are any trends that other cooperatives can learn from. So that's going to be coming out, and we appreciate all managers completing that. The next point is on their BIPA, and if you want to amaze your friends this year, that's known as the Biometric Information Protection Act, BIPA. And I bring this up just for a couple small points. One is that this is a very unique statute in Illinois. Illinois has significant protections on biometric information. What am I talking about? If you're taking and storing people's biometric information, maybe iris scans, fingerprint scans, anything that has biometric information on it, Illinois has a very protective statute. The interesting part about this, one is a caution to cooperatives. If for some reason you're collecting this, I don't know cooperatives that are, but I do know businesses that are. If you're collecting this information, be careful. One, you can't be doing that unless you have notified that person and you've gotten their consent to do it. If you don't, there are statutory penalties. And the reason this bullet point also has Facebook settlement on it, Facebook got rung up on this one. Facebook got sued because they allegedly violated the Illinois Biometric Information Privacy Act. Facebook admits no wrongdoing. They did enter into a settlement, and the settlement provides for $650 million. And so here's another tip for you. If you used Facebook since 2011, you're entitled to file a claim under this settlement act if you are interested. The amounts vary. The projected could be anywhere between $200 and $400. I don't know if that'll wear out or not, but it's $650 million. It's just for Illinois people. And there's a deadline. There's a deadline of November 23rd. So if you get to Thanksgiving and you haven't filled out your claim yet, you're out of the window. You can amaze your Thanksgiving table relatives and tell them that you filled out your claim and that they filled out theirs. So, but it's a cautionary tale of, there can be severe penalties regarding biometric information. So if you're collecting this on a co-op side, you need to be very careful. Final 2 points I wanted to talk about was new and future Illinois Supreme Court justices. As you're surely aware, there was just an election. On that election, there were lots of ballot initiatives and local races in state and federal. But there are also consequences for the Illinois Supreme Court. For the first time in history, a Illinois Supreme Court justice has not been retained. Every 10 years, you need to run as an Illinois Supreme Court justice to be retained. For the first time it happened, a justice was not retained. Justice Tom Kilbride is from what's called the 3rd District. It runs from kind of the Joliet area over to the Quad Cities, kind of down to Peoria. You need to get 60% of the votes, and he did not get that. So for the first time this has happened, and fortunately just a little while ago, Nick Wrights let me know that the Supreme Court has decided who will take his position, at least in the interim. And that's a justice from the appellate court up there. His name's Robert Carter. What's interesting about this is Robert Carter, I don't tell him I said this, but is probably considered an older judge, and he's only going to fill that for 2 years. And he's not going to run for election or re-election. So when 2022 comes around, you're going to have a race in the 3rd District and probably a lot of money pouring in, and people running as Republicans and Democrats. What all this is important is the Illinois Supreme Court has 7 justices, and that seat could change the outcome of the Illinois Supreme Court from 4-3 Democratic, which has been since the 1960s. It could change it to a 4-3 Republican. It has the possibility. There's also another seat that'll be up in 2022 as well, which is currently a Republican seat, could switch the other way. So there's some interesting chairs going on at the Illinois Supreme Court, something to kind of keep an eye out for. And I just put at the bottom the U.S. Supreme Court. It seems like there's a lot of discussion about the U.S. Supreme Court. I thought I'd just throw it on here, mainly if anybody had any questions, but when you're talking about elections and election law in the U.S. Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court typically is going to defer to what state law is. Election law is really controlled at the state level. There's hardly any federal control over state election law. So, as we kind of weave our way along here, what's going to happen at the U.S. Supreme Court or otherwise, it's really going to come down to what state law says and what state law goes. President Trump has stated that he wants a case to go to the Supreme Court. First you'd have to have a case filed in state court is what I would suggest, win or lose an appeal on the way up. So it's not as if, I think some people think that he can go straight to the Supreme Court. He certainly could try that. The Supreme Court, may have exclusive jurisdiction over certain cases. So it'd be interesting to see how this plays out, but it'll really come down to state law. When you think about other legal issues that I just want to comment briefly on, there was an article in the paper this morning about the GSA, that's the General Services Administration, and I think you may see more about that, whether the GSA is going to authorize the Biden campaign to access federal funds and federal documents. I think that could be an issue that could see a legal challenge. And then finally, I think you may see something on faithless electors. I don't know how the Electoral College is going to shake out, but whether faithless electors, how they can participate in the Electoral College will be interesting. But those are kind of just legal updates. I'd be glad to take any questions you have. I think I got time for Nick as well. Are there any questions? Questions, Ashley?
There are no questions currently. Again, if you would like to ask Craig a question, please send it through the chat, and I'll be happy to relay that for you.
I will just note one more Illinois law that the Illinois legislature amended the Illinois Human Rights Act. Essentially, all employers, all of them, part-time employee, an apprentice, whatever, you have to provide sexual harassment prevention training sometime this year. So if you're at a cooperative and you have done it or you haven't done it, you're not sure, it's something to think about. If you have any questions on that, feel free to ask me. The Department of Human Rights has the PowerPoint available. At the very end of that PowerPoint is a certification slide. The employees need to sign that. So if you work in HR, Human Resources, it's something to maybe put on your list. Make sure you check that one off. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. I'll be right here if you have any questions throughout, Ashley, okay?
Okay, thank you so much, Craig.
Sure.
Good afternoon. Appreciate the opportunity to be here. Appreciate Dan and Ashley and Brian putting this on. And kind of like Craig, I mean, if any questions pop up, certainly throughout, feel free to message Ashley and interrupt, and we can have a discussion. I guess following up with Craig, kind of dovetailing on the Supreme Court, I mean, that race he mentioned, so they ended up spending about $12 million basically just on a retention effort, so trying to get, under 60% was, half of the money was really against retaining Kilbride, the other half primarily from unions, trial lawyers, other kind of Democrat sources were trying to retain Kilbride, retain Democrat majority on the Supreme Court. So it was certainly an interesting race, but nowhere near the money that was spent on the fair tax. I'm guessing you probably saw an ad or two on that when they spend, probably by the end of the day, probably about $115 million for and against. So certainly some interesting races out there. Just a quick election kind of rundown. First, I didn't include on there, but nationally, some changed, but at the same time, I guess not a lot. Here in Illinois, one of the races that was really projected to be one of the closest in the nation, Congressman Rodney Davis in Central Illinois, kind of down to the Metro East, running for re-election. Betsy Dirksen-Londrigan was challenging him on the Democrat side. Expected it to be really close. Ended up being about a 10%, 55% to 45% race. So definitely not what it was shaping up to. And then kind of one surprise out of the suburbs, still not necessarily decided. You've got Congresswoman Lauren Underwood, kind of won a surprise race, suburban district that's changed a little bit, become more Democratic over the years. She beat an incumbent 2 years ago, running for re-election this time. State Senator, Illinois State Senator Jim Oberweis was running against her on the Republican side. Of course, he's got, the Oberweis name. The dairy company, ice cream shops, that sort of thing. Ended up, right now, she's up by she was down election day. He was up by about 1,000 votes or so. As mail-in ballots come in, she's now up about 1,000. So one would think, the way the mail-in ballots have been citing, she should be able to hang on, but certainly a race that, could come down to mail-in ballots can be received through November 17th. So definitely one to watch up there in the suburbs. But, you'll have a Democrat president, you'll have a Republican Senate likely. It's going to depend on the two runoff races down in Georgia, and then a Democrat House. So, it sets up for bipartisan, solutions, which is usually a good thing, and certainly usually a good thing for cooperatives. But one interesting fact, so this is the first newly elected Democrat president that won't also have a Democrat Senate since 1884. So you got to go back all the way to Grover Cleveland, so not Obama, Clinton, Carter, Johnson, Kennedy, Truman, FDR, Wilson. So they all had, new Democrat presidents, new Democrat Senates, certainly helped you push your agenda forward. This is the first time, in all those years that there'll be a Republican Senate. So will definitely be interesting. And like I said, hopefully, lead to more compromise as opposed to, just pushing through kind of one side. Illinois, not a lot of change. In the Illinois Senate, Democrats were able to pick up one seat. It's a suburban seat. It was, I mentioned Jim Overweiss running, for Congress, opened up that seat. You had a Democrat state rep that decided to seek it, and so she ended up prevailing in that. And then Democrats, really two big races downstate. You had Senator Kaler of Peoria running for re-election. That was a close one. And then less so, Senator Bennett out of Champaign. But, so 41 Dems, supermajority, and then to 18 Republicans. So much of the same there. Kind of in the House as well. Republicans were able to pick up 2 net seats. They lost 2 incumbents in the suburbs, but then on the other side, they were able to pick up 2 other suburban seats, defeating those Democrat incumbents, and then 2 down in the Metro East. In the 111th, Representative Monica Bristow, Amy Elk defeated her, and then in the 116th, Nathan Wrights was defeated by David Freese. So, still it's a Democrat supermajority in the House, so you wouldn't expect much to change there. But with elections always comes, interesting leadership discussions. You certainly saw it on the Senate Republican side. Bill Brady ended up kind of being challenged fairly quickly by Senator Dan McConkey from Lake Zurich, and the Republicans elected a new leader late last week, and so he'll be a new leader on the Republican side. House Republicans, kind of the same. You've got leader Jim Durkin, who's been there, and little rumblings of potentially a challenge. I think they've got a caucus set for later this week or next. They'll decide that. And then on the Democrat side, certainly well covered in the papers as far as, a few Democrats starting to speak out about whether Speaker Madigan should be reelected to that position. At this point, it still seems like, he can get the 60 votes needed, but you never know as those discussions happen and if others start to pick off. So definitely be interesting. For us, the biggest issue, this year was certainly an anomaly with not much happening, with, really not much of a spring session, everything just being COVID focused, budget focused. But what's been keeping us busy is really energy and environment policy. This was all the stuff that was kind of introduced in 2019. Nothing happened during that session, just kind of continuing discussions. So just kind of as a reminder of, what's out there, it's for us, the Clean Jobs Coalition bill is the one that has the most negative potential impacts, I guess, for cooperatives and municipals, the other not-for-profit utilities in Illinois. It's that CEJA bill that, it's an 800-page bill that does everything from carbon-free, more wind, more solar, capacity market reform, equity, worker transition, electric vehicles, basically anything under the sun that the Sierra Club, the NRDC, those other types of organizations have been looking for. And so in that, the worrisome things are potentially, could be of concern. They want to require co-ops to file with the ICC an equivalent plan for a renewable portfolio standard. So that kind of ratchets up to 45% in 2030, all the way up to 100% by 2050. They've got carbon-free requirements for Illinois. Also would require co-ops to put forth a carbon-free plan and kind of meeting what the IOUs would have to do. Kind of the same thing, carbon-free starting in 2021, which would be next year, and then, ramping up till 0% come 2030. They want to eliminate, all power plant emissions by 2030, which is certainly, a concern for us with the resources that we have. They're also making some rumblings about, solar equity and just, making sure that, net metering policies are the same, across the board. And so just watching for language there. So that's the CEJA bill. Pathway to 100, more the solar wind industry, they're just looking for more funding for their projects, primarily, taking the RPS up, but not a little more incrementally as opposed to what CEJA wants to do. Exelon, they're making rumblings about they've got, 2 nuclear plants that are subsidized that happened 4 years ago. They've got 4 that aren't. They're saying, hey, these are no longer profitable. If we don't get some sort of extra assistance, we're going to have to shut down Byron, we're gonna have to shut down Morris come fall of 2021. And then the other two, they're also not profitable. We need to, at some point, probably look to shut those down too. Vistra, they own a coal fleet in downstate Illinois. Kind of the same thing. They're saying, hey, our plants aren't profitable. We want to shut them down come 2025, turn them into solar and battery storage facilities. NRG, same thing. They own some coal, some natural gas. Want to just kind of, get some assistance to pay to keep their plants open. CalMed and Ameren, they've got their formula rates that expire here in a couple of years. They're looking to extend it. And then Ameren kind of filed a different bill on their own, really just kind of, with all the CalMed controversy that's happened here recently, they filed a bill that just kind of extends formula rates for them, also allows them to invest in solar, put in a little more utility scale, add it into the IPA portfolio. So, that kind of level sets, I guess, all of the proposals that are out there. As far as more recently, what's really been, you had the governor's office. All these proposals are out there. There's been a lot of discussion, and this was kind of their attempt, I think, to bring everything together and really lay out what are the principles, what are the priorities from the governor's perspective. So I guess it was late July, he put out this 57-point document that kind of, increasing ethics requirements, primarily for the IOUs, expanding consumer affordability protection, renewable energy, he ended up picking out 100% by 2050, which, I guess is somewhat of a good sign. That didn't side with CEJA, or what more the NRDC Sierra Club's trying to push with that 2030 date, trying to give it a little longer horizon. At least that's what he's looking for, implementing a carbon price. Basically, you got all these programs, they got to figure out some way to pay for it. And so I think that's one of the solutions that they think could be viable. Had some transportation stuff on EVs, equity, energy efficiency. So over the last, couple months, AIEC participates in that process. They put up kind of 3 different stakeholder groups. We're on the power sector one. And so it was Zoom calls with 100 different, representatives from various organizations, businesses, power, anybody who's kind of involved in the power sector. And so just kind of walking through each of the points. It felt kind of like a subject matter hearing, just a lot of discussion. Certainly there were no decisions, but that's kind of, I think, the governor's office attempt to maybe, gather some feedback, of what the reaction is to some of their points. But certainly, there really wasn't any sort of decisions made, any sort of language being floated. So, I feel like right now we're just kind of in that discussion standpoint. And it seems, at one point we thought, well, maybe it didn't happen in the spring. There's a potential that folks are trying to line up, whether that's the governor's office, whether that's environmental advocates, whether it's unions, lining up to try to do something here in December, maybe even January. But at this point, it just doesn't seem like that's really even realistic, just given that, that train's not really on the tracks, and you really don't even have any language or a bill that you can really look at that kind of narrows in some of those points. So at this point, really seems like it's all going to be kicked to spring. Things could happen in the January lame duck session. And that's the other thing about it. With COVID right now, they're supposed to be in session next week. I don't even know that they will. There's been no decision made. They're kind of prepping to still come back to Springfield for those 3 days, but with the high positivity rate, there's a concern about, a lot of those legislators, after they come here, just being in that mass setting from people around the state, they go back and quarantine. And so that would overlap with Thanksgiving holiday. And so whether or not they cancel next week, kind of maybe try to thread something into mid-December in between Thanksgiving and Christmas, kind of remains to be seen. So right now, just still kind of more to come on that, but I would say for the most part, it seems like things will be kicked to spring. One other topic, just to kind of, I think, wrap up, but talk about what's going on at the federal level. That, one of our priorities right now that we'll certainly be working on as, Congress comes back into session. They have their own lame duck session, but it's the Flexible Financing for Rural America Act. So what it really is just trying to allow our U.S. borrowers to refinance their loans. So for Illinois electric cooperatives, I mean, a lot of them have moved to either co-bank, just some other sort of financing, whether it's CFC, co-bank, but we do still have a few in Illinois that borrow from our U.S., but certainly still a lot nationally that borrow from our U.S. In Illinois, I guess we've got 3, Illinois Electric, Menard, and Southern Illinois Power Cooperative, as well as their 3 telephone cooperatives. So basically, it's just trying to allow them to take advantage of the low interest rates that are going on right now and refinance any outstanding debt that they have. So for Illinois electric cooperatives, I mean, on a whole, NREC is estimating that just by refinancing, it could save, around $70 million over the life of these loans. So certainly a good priority, something that would be good to happen as Congress comes back into session. And kind of just, I think that the tact has been similar to, you'll recall at the end of last year, we had a couple wins. We had the Rural Act that passed that, kept co-ops, if we receive any federal funds, whether that's FEMA, broadband, economic development, whatever it is, make sure that, we can continue to be not-for-profits and not jeopardize that status. You had the Cadillac tax fee repealed. That was a big win. And then the other was the Secure Act that helped reduce the premiums that our co-op pension plan pays into the federal government. So just trying to take that tack of right now, getting a lot of co-sponsors on both the Senate bill and the House bill. Good response and reaction from our Illinois delegation. So just continue to build up those numbers. And it's really, if there is some sort of COVID relief package that starts passing, trying to attach this onto it and get it to the president's desk. So any support, that you can certainly lend there, or, if you happen to see, your congressperson out and about or at some event or virtual event, certainly talking about this bill is certainly helpful. So with that, I think that was the end, and happy to take any questions, or I think Craig is as well.
Sure, Ashley's got a question.
I do have a question. Nick, have you heard a timeline for when there might be hearings on the ComEd Madigan issue? And do you anticipate a new speaker to be elected?
Man, hard-hitting questions. Okay, and I assume probably most are familiar enough with the ComEd thing, but I guess for those that aren't, so over the summer, the U.S. District Attorney, basically came out with this deferred prosecution agreement that they had done an investigation into Commonwealth Edison, and Commonwealth Edison hired a bunch of kind of flowed through consulting groups, flowed through lobbyists, but essentially the allegation from them was that ComEd hired people that were from Speaker Madigan's organization, maybe political organization, former staffers, whatever it is, basically kind of hired them on consulting contracts, trying to influence, at that time, it was public official A, I think is what they termed it, but it was, Speaker Madigan. And so that, of course, has created a lot of discussion within certainly the political circles. And so the Republicans filed a resolution with the House just saying that, it's clear that, Speaker Madigan, knew about this, and it was, improper. I mean, it's just kind of, all we know right now is what the federal government has filed. And so I'm sure there's certainly more, more there, but nevertheless, that's what's public. So anyway, Jim Durkin filed something with the House that said, Speaker Madigan, we got to look into this and, figure out if we need to, admonish him or kick him out of the House or whatever it is. And so there were a couple of hearings over that, over the last month or two. But I think, it's a bipartisan committee, 3 Dems, 3 Republicans, and, the Democrat chairman just kind of said, this is being politicized. Let's wait until after the election. They were supposed to have a hearing, I guess it was today. No, maybe this Thursday. or last Thursday, but it ended up being canceled. And so I haven't seen that it's been rescheduled yet. But at the end of the day, I mean, I think that process is more of a political process, if you will. And if it's made up of 3 Dems and 3 Republicans, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if they do take some sort of vote at some point that, you know, that could end up being the vote. So there's kind of that part of the question. The other part, I think, Ashley, remind me if I'm wrong, but it was about the speaker kind of being reelected, correct?
Yes. Do you anticipate a new speaker to be elected?
Right now, I should have looked at how many there, you know, so if you factor that, you know, let's assume that there are a couple races out there that are still pretty close, but let's assume that Republicans, you know, pick up those 2 seats, and that's what it ends up being. So the Dems now have 72. So that means, you know, you just have to have 60 to be elected speaker. So you got 59 others, assuming, you know, the speaker would vote for himself. Right now, I think there may be 7 Democrat legislators that have come out either, you know, last few months, or even one came out yesterday, said, I'm not going to vote for Speaker Madigan for speaker again. You know, I think it's time for a change, or, you know, I like Stephanie Kipowit, who's planning to run, that sort of thing. So that's what you've got. I think it, you know, remains to be seen if any others peel off. At this point, I don't know that any others really will. So if you're asking me to, you know, bet on it, and Craig's a betting man, so he probably would bet on it. I would say I think he probably is reelected speaker, but you know, it really is going to come down to, you know, are there those 4 or 5 people, you know, else that are going to peel off? So I don't know. We'll see. I guess if nothing else, by, you know, January 13th is when they seat the new General Assembly, but they'll probably have a caucus well before then. So.
That was the only question that we had. If anyone else has any questions, please send them to myself, AIEC, and I can address those with Nick or Craig. We'll just leave it open for, you know, a couple more seconds because we are still ahead of schedule a little bit.
We know that it's been a long day, so.
As
But the folks are eager to get on with the rest of their day and head into Veterans Day.
Okay, well, we can go ahead and wrap it up. If anyone does have any follow-up questions for Nick or Craig, there are fairly easy to get a hold of here at the AIEC. If you do not have their contact information, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'm more than happy to put you in touch with them to clarify any, you know, any further questions that you might have come up. I want to thank you all for calling in today. We've had what I would consider fairly successful first day of our AIEC webinar weeks. Our next is set to take place next Tuesday, beginning at 9 a.m., and that is going to be how EMCs are staying resilient with simplified infrastructure management with, and registration on that will stay open for 1 hour prior to the webinar start time. If you miss that deadline, you can email me. I'm more than happy to put you in. Otherwise, thank you so much, Nick and Craig, for taking the time to present for us today. And thank you so much, everyone who called in. Did you have something to add, Craig?
Actually, there was one thing I forgot to mention. Do you have just a second?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was going to mention this. I mentioned that the Work Comp Board had met on Friday afternoon. Well, one of the things the Work Comp Board decided to do was to renew our workers' compensation with Federated, our current insurance carrier. What I think might be interesting on here is that our rate for the next year is going to drop about 4%. That's really just a factor of the claims we've had in the past. So if you are interested, the average payroll for a cooperative here in Illinois is about 2.6 million. And of that, about 100,000, maybe 97,000 or so is the average premium a co-op pays for workers' compensation insurance. So just call it 100,000. COPE will save probably 3,500, maybe closer to 4,000 dollars next year on work count. So I just want to give you a brief update on that. That's all I had, Ashley.
Okay, thank you so much, Craig. And then if anyone, again, if you have any follow-up questions for Nick or Craig, please feel free to reach out to me. If you're not able to get in contact with them, if you're, it's inwrites@aiec.coop or csondergroth@aiec.coop. And again, please feel free to reach out to me. So thank you all again for calling in today, and we hope to see you for our next series next Tuesday, the 17th, beginning at 9 a.m. AIEC.coop/webinar weeks for more information, or feel free to contact me and I'm happy to fill you in. So thank you all, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.